Greetings and salutations to everyone. Welcome to Autist Circle number 16, Andrew Wyeth. I'm joined, as
Yeah.
usual, by Total Blackout Painting.
Hello. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about Andrew Wyeth, the American realist painter. He was one of the foundational, one of the most important and talented American realist artists of the 20th century. So the first thing we'll do is we'll jump in on the timeline like we normally do. So here's where he falls on our timeline. So Wyeth, like Dolly, he sits at a unique spot in art history. He was born on the tail end of American realism during the explosion of abstract expressionism and just before the rise of pop art. And he's sometimes described as an American regionalist, which is partially correct. It's partially correct.
Okay.
And while his works are more closely called realism due to his depictions, his work is also called psychological realism, kind of in the same vein as Hopper. But his work focuses obsessively on observational accuracy and a careful composition, objects with emotional weight, and the meaningfulness of absence. And the most technically accurate label for Wyeth is American magic realism, which is a weird description, but that's kind of the category that he falls into. Okay. He's often framed as anti-modern. Yeah, I know. It's like it's magical realism is what magical realism is oh, we got everybody in the chat now. Nice. It's kind of a subset of realism that focuses more on the kind of psychological aspect of spaces and things.
And apparently your audio's low, Dave.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I'm boosted as much as I can be, so I'm gonna have to. Let's see. Is my audio low or is it just not? Can they hear me at all?
Can you guys hear him at all, or is it just... maybe you guys need to turn your
make sure that my mic didn't...
all the way.
Yeah, no. Dude, it fucking did it again.
Oh no.
Discord dumped my mic. I tested this shit before the stream started. I went and tested everything before the stream started. Discord dumped my fucking mic. Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
mic
let's back up. Couldn't be the stream.
F's in chat.
Discord is fucking sabotaging me, or not? It's OBS. OBS is getting me every goddamn time. Okay.
There you go. All right.
So we'll start back. Let me start over again. Okay, so we'll start back on the condensed timeline. Here we are. So Wyeth sits at a unique spot in art history. He was born on the tail end of American realism during the explosion of abstract expressionism and prior to the rise of pop art. And he's sometimes described as an American regionalist, which is partially correct, but his works are more closely called realism due to his depictions. And his work is also called psychological realism in the same vein as Hopper. And his work focuses obsessively on observational accuracy, careful composition, objects with emotional weight, and the meaningfulness of absence. The most technically accurate label for Wyeth is American magic realism. And what I said before when my mic was fucking muted, magic realism is realism that focuses more on the psychological aspects of a scene instead of just the actual depiction of it. He's often framed as anti-modern, but that's not completely accurate because he eschews abstraction and theory-driven art, preferring stark portrayal of reality with no novelty. He embraces the isolation and emotional alienation and the ambiguity that really is the hallmark of modern art, but while maintaining many traditional and unique aspects to himself. So, in a sea of abstract and modern artists, Wyeth stood out for his brilliant use of realism and emotional gravity, and his ability to paint scenes that make you nostalgic for a time and place you've never been are what made him one of the greatest American realist artists. So from there, we will jump into his early life. So Andrew Wyeth was born in 1917 in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, as the youngest of 5 children. And his father, N.C. Wyeth, was an illustrator and was considered to be the American illustrator at the time. And his father, an incredibly accomplished and well-known, and was an incredibly accomplished and well-known artist for his book covers and many other things. So I've got a few of his book covers here, and many of us here may have seen them before. But he did illustrations for Treasure Island, for Robert Louis Stevenson books, for James Fenimore Cooper books. So he did the Deerslayer and a few others.
Yeah, I think he did the
Jules Verne books.
entirety of the Leather Stocking Tales, which is
I believe
Cooper's-
so.
Yeah, which honestly,
Yeah.
it's one of the greatest works of early American literature. But still, continue.
Yeah, and who better to have illustrate your books than someone who is a uniquely talented and kind of foundational American artist than N.C. Wyeth. So Andrew did not just grow up around art. He grew up immersed in art, and his upbringing was something of an art boot camp. He did. While he was young, he was a chronically ill and sickly child. But this led to him being pulled from public school and privately educated by his father at home. And he spent most of his time alone, constantly drawing and studying the world when he wasn't being instructed. His father took full control of his son's education, and he instructed him on anatomy, perspective, drawing, and life. His father taught him discipline because he believed art was nothing without discipline. And this was a lesson that Andrew would carry for the rest of his life. His teenage years, he was working obsessively with watercolors. And I actually have one here that I forgot to put up again. So this is one of his early watercolors that I have here. That's at the bottom of the it's at the bottom of the page
that's
there.
Really,
it says
really
watercolor.
nice piece. And watercolors, I know just enough. Watercolor is one of the harder mediums to work in, just because you're trying to
Absolutely
use the negative space of the white background for half the painting.
Yeah, and much like Hopper, he masterful use of watercolor, and he was able to bring out really good techniques. So his teenage years, he was working obsessively with watercolors. I'd say a medium that requires discipline because you can't hide mistakes in watercolors. And by the time he was 18, he was making strong, technically sound paintings that showed his early use of emotional restraint, and that's kind of what this shows. It's an image of a man by a boat by the sea in the watercolor, and a kind of a stoic-looking man. So, moving on. So in the 30s, on to the 30s. So in 1937, at the age of 20, he would have his first solo exhibition in New York, which sold out completely.
Wow.
It was a critical success from that moment on, and he benefited from his father's legacy. And after that exhibition, he was no longer just known as N.C. Wyeth's son. He'd actually started to come into his own. By this time in his life, he'd shown mastery of elite draftsmanship and a preference for solitude, emotional restraint, and a preference for his hometown, Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. In the late 30s, his watercolor showed a discipline not normally seen in that medium. His technical mastery of the medium matched that of Hopper. His subject matter was dramatically different. He showed a tendency towards more rustic themes like barns, windows, hills, countryside scenes, stuff like that, to where Hopper painted city scenes. And Hopper really worked to capture that. All of his stuff was really strict architectural. Hopper was super into that. Wyeth focused more on scenes and composition of rural scenes. So we'll move forward a little quicker here. In 1939, he met Betsy James, and she would become his wife less than a year later. So similar to Joe and Rosalie Bierstadt, this is the running theme. She immediately recognized his talent potential, and she saw to the core of him. She saw that he was a strong, stoic man, and that he needed a champion and a cheerleader, and she was it. She was his manager, his editor. She protected him, and she was his muse through that time. Though she was so much more than that, she was really everything to him. Many historians argue that there would be no Andrew Wyeth on national consciousness without Betsy and her work to put him there. She was intense and disciplined, and then the relationship was emotionally complex, which we'll find out later in the presentation. But she became the stability that he really needed in life to flourish. Being an intensely emotional, introspective person, tend to forget stuff on the outside world, and that's what she was. She was his tether to the outside world to keep him grounded and alive. And she would go on to be the model for a lot of his works, but she was definitely not his only model, and we'll follow up on that later. So this is a portrait of his father. This was a self-portrait his father did. So from 1942 to 1944, after the 30s, things seem to be going pretty well for Andrew. His fame is on the rise. He's splitting his time between Chadds Ford and Cushing, Maine. Spends his summers in Cushing, Maine, and everything else in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania.
And just so those that aren't aware, Chadds Ford is near Philadelphia, kind of the Pennsylvania, Delaware nexus region. Very pretty, but was once. And anyway, just for geographical knowledge for people. Yeah. So it wasn't that far of a stretch for him to run to spend his summers in Maine. But despite his increasing success, he still did kind of exist in his father's shadow because his father was such a looming figure in the art world. But on October 19th, 1945, his father, N.C. Wyeth, was killed in a car accident. He was stuck by a train, and Newell Converse Wyeth was killed instantly. And the accident was violent and sudden, and it was widely publicized. It was very public. It absolutely crushed Andrew, and it marks a turning point in his life. And he would later go on to say that his father's death made the landscape feel different. It was like his world became a different place after his father died. The world became a sharper, more kind of jagged, harsher place for him after his father's death. But his grief over his father's death would drive his art forward, adding to the gravity that has really become the hallmark of his work. Spaces feel emptier, figures are more isolated, and one of his greatest regrets, and I heard him talk about this in an interview, because there's lots of interviews with him, because he was such a famous artist, and of course there's interviews from him during the 80s and 90s, or 90s and 2000s. And he said that one of his greatest regrets in life was never getting to paint his father, which that touches me. He really did want to honor his father and his legacy, but he never got a chance to do it, and he regretted that for the rest of his life. So in the wake of his father's death, and we're not going to go into too much on this picture, but I just wanted to bring it up because it was the one he painted after his father died. And it's called Winter. And it's Winter from 1946. So in 1945, following his father's death, he started painting this. And it shows a boy running down in a barren hill in the winter. It's a really stripped down and raw image. And he's turned his grief over his father into this painting. So after his father's death, his work shift. There's no more narratives. There's no heroes. There's no major action. Just quiet contemplation.
And you can see in this one, the kid is just kind of slowly, he's wandering down the hill. It doesn't look like he's running. It doesn't look like anything. He's just moving down this barren, empty wasteland. Um, so emptiness becomes his new hero. It becomes the new subject of his works. During this time, Betsy manages everything. She encourages him to work through it. Without Betsy's guidance, we might not have these works today. But from this point on, Andrew doesn't just paint loneliness as a subject. It's an emotional condition of his life, and he really expresses that on canvas. So, which brings us to the next. So starting in the 30s, like I said, he started spending his time between Cushing, Maine and Chadds Ford. And in Maine, on a hill overlooking the sea, was the home of Christina and Alvaro Olson. Christina suffered from a degenerative muscular condition, so she couldn't walk, but she refused to use a wheelchair, and she would drag herself by her elbows everywhere she needed to go.
Oh, gosh.
Around town, around the farm, around anywhere she needed to go, instead of, she felt a wheelchair was undignified. So, but Wyeth, he became very close friends with these people. He did not see her as a tragic figure because she didn't see herself as a tragic figure. He saw her and her struggle as heroic, and he deeply admired her fierce independence, and she embodied many of the traits he deeply respected because she endured hardship without complaint. Living in the 30s without a wheelchair, where there's like not even a lot of paved roads or anything, like out in the country, that is a incredibly hardy existence.
Oh yeah, and crawling
So
everywhere you went. That's
yeah,
determination.
absolutely. I can't think of anything more that displays that more. So her brother Alvaro cared for her and the house and the property, but he wasn't like her caretaker. And he was a stolid, stoic man, and Wyeth admired him greatly. He admired them both because they were very stoic and matter of fact about their life, and were not like, woe is me. They lived in a way. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. Sorry, I had to clear my throat.
Oh, okay. They lived in a way where that mirrored his internal world. They were isolated and resistant to modern intrusion. They were constrained and rooted and grounded in a solid place. They weren't just friends; they were his companions in temperament. He felt a lot of kinship with them, and he would remain friends with them until their deaths in the 60s. So, before we go any further in the works, I just have a brief aside about egg tempura, because this was his preferred medium, was egg tempura. So egg tempura involves mixing pigment with egg yolk and water. It makes the paint dry quickly, so making this an incredibly unforgiving medium. And it's one of the oldest painting techniques in Western art. This was the primary medium for early Renaissance painters and medieval artists, stuff like that, until the refinement of oil paint in the mid 1500s. So, like a lot of the ancient works that we see now, the reason why they have to have so much touch up is because they were painted with egg tempura, which fades a lot more than oil over time. And this is typically painted on wood panels or rigid boards. But you can do canvas with it too. The surface doesn't shine, and it doesn't have the pastiche texture of oil paints. So it doesn't like clump up and layer up like Rembrandt's work. Each stroke has to be precise, and it's a medium that requires control and discipline, incredible amounts of discipline, which is probably why he loved it so much and worked almost exclusively in it. So with that, I'm going to jump over to the first piece, and this is called Christina's World. This is one of his absolute most famous paintings. Most people have seen this painting.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It was painted in 1948. It's about 32 inches by 48 inches, so it's decent size. And it's currently at the MoMA, where it has been ever since it first debuted. It debuted at the Museum of Modern Art. They bought it immediately, and I've had it ever since.
Hmm.
So again, this was painted with egg tempera, and it requires a slow build-up, and of course is unforgiving with mistakes. So each stroke has to be deliberate. You can't cover stuff up because it doesn't blend and it doesn't layer. So in this painting, we think that, you look at the woman and you think she's the main subject, but really what the main draw to this painting is the space. It's not necessarily her per se. The real source of tension in this painting comes from the space between her and the house. So the woman, Christina, the body is that of Betsy. It's not Christina's body, but the gnarled hands and misshapen elbows are Christine's, which you can. See if you find pictures of Christine, which I didn't put any more in here, but if you find pictures of Christine, she does have this kind of her elbows are rough and messed up. Her arms are taut and wiry, and her hands are worn and rough from dragging herself along.
Yeah.
So he painted the house.
It's kind of fascinating, just with her in the foreground, but it's really the distance between her and the house that is the fascination.
Yeah, because and once you realize, because a lot of people look at this and they're like, oh, it's just a lady laying down in the field. But once you realize the actual story, that this is a woman who is dragging herself towards her fucking house. She's heading home. She's moving to the house right now. Not like it's not a relax. She's not relaxing. She's not lounging in the field. She's working. She's struggling up this dry hill of grass towards that isolated house on the hill. So he did stylize the house a little bit from the actual house because the barn and the house are farther apart in this than they are in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But he did that to kind of open up the space and create more of an area. So that's her destination, is the house. And it really, the house being off center and in the back, it really shows the kind of austerity of the scene and gives you, I think it heightens the emotional drama of it. And again, highlights the space as the primary driver of this painting. The primary source of painting or tension in this painting it's not the woman, it's not the house, it's the distance between them. And I personally, I find it fascinating. I think he captured it really well. And Christina herself saw this, but she loved this painting. He didn't actually show her at first. He painted it and hung it in his living room. And then he invited Christina and Alvaro over and had her sit on the couch right below the painting.
Yeah.
And she didn't know it was there until he pointed it out to her. And once she saw it, she immediately loved it, because she understands the spirit in which it was painted, in that it wasn't meant to be desperation. And the lack of you can't see her face, right? So you don't get a draw on the emotion of the woman. And it really makes you part of the scene. You're with her on this journey.
Well, and just something else. Just the posture is not one of someone in desperation. It's very much kind of almost a proud posture.
Yeah, which and what inspired him to paint this painting was one day he was out there at Christina and Alvaro's, and he saw her crawling around the garden, crawling outside, and he and it inspired him because he felt it was he felt the heroism in her actions. He felt the boldness of her of her confidence and her spirit, and it really touched him a lot, and moved it. It helped to provide him with a good distraction from his father's death. And like I said, these people were his companions in temperament and spirit, and he really just loved them. So with that, we'll move on to the next one. And this is in the 50s. We'll move on. This is and this painting is called Trodden Weed. This one's about 20 by 18. And again, it's another egg tempera. And this one is currently held in a private collection. A lot of his works are held in private collections because, of course, when he sold them, he sold them within the last 50 years. So they wouldn't all be bought up by museums. A lot of them would have been bought by private collectors. So Wyeth kind of referred to this as a self-portrait because it shows a solitary pair of boots crossing a field of dry weeds and grass. And the scene is really tight. There's not much of a horizon. You can kind of see a little bit in the background, but there's no definitive skyline. And the dark hues give the scene a feeling of kind of persistence and solemnity. The boots are scuffed and worn to show the life they've lived. Practical and austere, with no adornment. It focuses more on the journey than the boots. There's no obvious destination, though. It's just treading the path that's been walked 100 times before. Mm-hmm. So this painting exists in a time when abstraction was really on the rise. Pollock and Rothko. Pollock was dripping shit on paint, and Rothko was busy doing stuff while other people were destroying shit. Yeah. They were changing. Those guys were kind of changed the way. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's a stark contrast between life with talent and those clowns who are just making a fast buck, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, hey, look, there's skill here. You see the weed, the boots, the detail. It's like, yes, it's abstract, but it's not annoying.
No. Yeah, and it excuse me. Yeah, it really. So those guys were changing how people looked at art, but Wyeth, he maintained serene and traditional work ethic, kind of tempered by his introspective manner, and he held on to and really embraced realism in a time when realism was not actually the in thing. People saw realism in this regard. Some of the critics saw realism in this regard as kind of old-fashioned. Of course, those are douchey art critics, so that's likely that. But he critics complained about his work, but the public fucking loved him. So
let's see. Some douche nozzle who thinks they know better than the artist, or the public that's like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, go figure. So while Christina's world gives you a kind of a sense of longing, this is the post-longing world where longing kind of gives way to persistence, where that space between the house, it's closed, and now the space is kind of in front of him. And which is what this picture kind of represents, is that space. You could think of it as if you were behind him, you would kind of see this scene similar to Christina in the field. That's the kind of feeling I get from this. And I think it's really the kind of feeling that he tried to portray in a lot of his work.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, so moving on. Man, I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. So during the 50s, when the art world was really being overtaken by abstraction. Dali, he had come over to America and started kind of taking over things there. There were so many other artists, Pollock, Rothko, um, many abstract and surrealist artists that were incredibly popular on the world scene, along with things like Andy Warhol and other pop artists. They were just they were dominating the scene, and at a time when they were dominating the scene with outlandish and gregarious actions and paintings and films, um, Wyeth never strayed from being the stalwart, stoic, introspective, intensely emotionally complex man that he was. He rejected the broad spectacle of art brought on by people like Dali. He did not. He felt it was somewhat undisciplined and slightly undignified, which is completely reasonable.
Yeah,
I don't think that's an incredibly unfair interpretation at all.
I mean, to me, it's kind of the
Um,
difference between someone who is, very internally driven, very, regimented in everything they do, versus someone who runs around, with flair and dash and does it to impress others. Where Wyeth is very,
right?
very much the son of his father in that regard.
Yeah, and I also like to think of him in the same vein as like. So his father worked the illustrators. Same with Edward Hopper. They were both illustrators, and while Hopper hated illustrating, because he felt so constrained by it, Wyeth really Wyeth really worked. He loved it, and he did amazing work with it. They both. I totally lost my train of thought. They were craftsmen in the same way that like Rubens was a craftsman.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan's, they were craftsmen. They were artists. They were working artists. His father was a working artist. He ran a studio. He ran a tight studio that produced amazing work. He had Wyeth had brothers and sisters that also kind of went on to follow artistic pursuits, although not to the great heights that he did. And then Wyeth himself ended up having several children. And grandchildren. One of his grandchildren maintains a trust of his works, and he's been he to me feels like a callback to a more rigid and I don't know if disciplined, but definitely disciplined, but a more kind of tradesman time when art was a trade. It wasn't just a leisurely pursuit, and it wasn't broad spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel he is so much different than Dali and some of the other artists in that regard. He's really, the traditionalism kind of roots him.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of going back. He's more, again, as you said before, you're more like a Rubens than, say a Caravaggio.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very good comparison. He was more, I mean, because Rubens was definitely a serious artist and an incredibly disciplined artist, just like just like Wyeth. Wyeth is an incredibly disciplined artist. He painted every single day. So back to the 50s. During the 50s, he ends up spending all of his time. He falls into a routine, just going between Chad's Ford and Maine. By this time, he's kind of settled with his father's death. He becomes more introspective. His humor gets a little drier, and his emotional expressions become a little more indirect. During this period, his subjects focused on things, so boots, boats, beds, floors, windows. Human presence is implied, but it's rarely shown in a lot of his major works, although he did continue doing portraits and all this stuff like that. And also during this time, his relationships with the Olsons deepened while Betsy continued to manage his art and his life. But their relationship at this time is not one necessarily based on romance. You know, like same with Joe Hopper and Gala Dolly. You know, they their relationships weren't based on love; they were based on passion. And in this regard, they were kind of based on mutual survival. You know, like Betsy loved him and knew that he needed encouragement and drive. He needed to be pushed a little bit. And supported at the same time. And that's what she did. She really helped push him forward. So we are going to jump to the next piece. Jumping forward a little bit into the 60s. So this one is called Master Bedroom. It's painted in 1965. It's about 21 by 29 inches. It's a watercolor on paper. And this one is currently held by Victoria Browning Wyeth, his granddaughter, in that private collection. So this is his dog. It's a portrait of his dog, Rattler, sleeping on the bed. It's a warm and peaceful scene. It's very quiet and solemn, and it's an incredibly intimate scene. So, and it hints at the occupation of the scene as or the space, because it's definitely lived in, but you don't see people here.
Yeah,
the presence of people is just an implication.
Well, yeah, that's something I kind of like, where you, the viewer, it's more like this is your space that you've entered into. That's a very unique way of painting. It's where, where you're putting the viewer in the perspective, not just like you're seeing this scene, but there's kind of a feeling of ownership, because it does feel very intimate.
Yeah, it does. Just especially with the dog sleeping on the bed. It's just not something that you would get to see outside of your own house. Generally, like, this isn't a scene that you would encourage unless you lived or encounter unless you kind of lived there. Now for a watercolor, I would just like to point out how just fantastically detailed this work is for a watercolor. Like the dog looks phenomenal. And it does show that mastery of the negative, the white space. Of course, the bedspread does too, the little fringes on it. But it also has the lines. You can see the kind of filigree on the
bedspread,
or the embroidery on the comforter.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then the other thing that really jumps out at me is the window. Because of course you see the shutter. It's not the shutter, it's the side of the house. But then the tree branches and everything in there, and the way the light comes in. It's just really great detail for a watercolor. And then the way the light is hitting the bed is also something else, because it shows the directionality of the light and his use of the light to kind of enhance the scene. Because the way the light's shining in, it just makes it seem like this is a midday scene. This is a nice, cozy scene in the middle of the day. Everybody's taking a nap. It happens so many times around me that, like, I'll be chilling out around the house and then I'll look around and all the cats are just asleep around me and the dog's asleep. And I'm like, man, I would just want to go fucking take a nap now. This is cozy.
Yeah.
I'm just hanging out with my animals. It's cozy.
Yeah.
So now while we look at this,
got like that it's like a midday on a winter's day, and you've just walked in. The pine tree out there is kind of just tapping against the window. Like, yeah, okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and it's and in this, it's a quiet scene, and that really becomes the subject of the scene. the serenity and its peace. Like such a peaceful painting.
Hmm.
And a loving portrait of his dog. And it's done in such a way to portray the peace that the dog brought to him, you know.
Mhm.
And kind of like all animals, like all the pets. We you know, we love our animals. And he was no different. He loved his dog. And this scene, he really uses his dog and the peaceful love that he felt from his dog to help bring the serenity and the calmness of this scene to bear. And I think it's phenomenal. I love it. It is one of those paintings that you look at it and immediately feel a pull to it. Not in like the liminal lonely way that Christina's World or Winter or some of the other ones we're going to explore, not in that way, but in a way that's more comforting.
Mhm.
That's more, it really is a change. So it really breaks from the emotional register of his previous works. And it shows a sense of peace and calm that a lot of his other works did not. And not just, you know, not just loneliness and austerity, but actual serenity and peacefulness.
Mhm.
So with that, we'll move on to the next one. And this painting is called Alvaro and Christina. And it was painted in 1968. So Alvaro passed in 1967 and Christina passed in 1968. And he painted this after Christina's death. It's a 20 by 16, roughly 20 by 16 on an egg tempera panel. And again, this is held in private collection. And he always admired and loved them, but they were getting older. And so although their passing was not like this great surprise, like, oh God, who would have seen that coming? It was a tragedy for him. You know, it was a loss of kindred souls, and he felt deeply for it. So this is a picture from inside the home that Christina lived in. And it shows the just kind of really simple manner that they lived in. They were, you know, by the 60s, things had changed so much in America. The change from the 30s to the almost 70s, like this is late 60s. By that time, the change in our society, in technology, like everybody had a fucking TV, a radio, and a phone.
Yeah.
You know, or most people had a TV or radio. They all had access to phones, stuff like that.
Oh, I think
Christina and Alvaro always lived a simple life.
it's also worth noting in a lot of areas by the late 60s, a lot of them had, you know, electricity, even in the more rural areas, and plumbing. As a friend
Yeah.
of mine, when he was growing up in rural, you know, Appalachia, they didn't get toilets in their houses until he came back from Vietnam. It's like that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
kind of world that we're seeing transition here. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the tub, the basket, the bucket, I mean, they all kind of seem out of place for the late 60s. But their house, like Wyeth, it really rejected the whims and wefts of time. He rejected modernism and its spectacle, instead preferring quiet dignity to the individual and their emotions. So this painting is an acknowledgement of their passing and of their place in his life, and of the passing of an era for him. He paints the disappearance of his friends with a stillness and a finality. That the world he's been painting for so long, Christina's world, it no longer exists. So, you know, much as the world shifted after the death of his father, the world shifted slightly after the death of Christina and Alvaro also. And this is, I think this is perhaps one of his most distilled works, because it shows that grief doesn't need a big explanation. Memory doesn't need faces, and presence doesn't need people. And this marks the closing of yet another chapter in his life, the chapter he was spending his summers with Alvaro and Christina in Maine.
Well, yeah, and the thing I find
And
very remarkable is the wear on the door. It's just such an intimate moment with that. And it's like, yeah, you
yeah,
see where
absolutely.
like the lower part of the door is her part of the door, and the upper part's Alvaro's. It's just
Yep.
kind of an interesting
Yeah.
dichotomy.
Yeah. And if you've ever spent time in an old, like the old farmhouses and stuff like that, I mean, when I was a kid, they don't hardly exist anymore. But when I was a kid, I did get to see places that were old like this and places that were lived in. And this definitely shows a lived in place.
Mhm.
It's a space that was occupied by people, that people lived here, but they don't anymore. And it was again, like the statement of a tribute to his friend's passing, by showing, this is where you lived, this is where I loved you, and now you're gone.
Mhm.
And this was his tribute to that. So, all right, moving on.
All right.
Yeah. So in the 70s, he was internationally recognized and financially stable. He'd got and his work meets opposition from critics. The public loves him. Like I said before, critics thought he was too old fashioned, but people loved his work. And at this point, he's really firmly established himself as a singularly great American realist artist.
Mhm.
Which why we can see he's on the cover of fucking Time magazine. This was in 1963. But he was on the cover of Time magazine, so this was a little later. Or this was earlier than 70s, but
when Time magazine actually meant something.
yeah. Yeah, if you think so.
Not really, but I figured I'd throw him a
Oh,
bone.
hey,
Yeah.
Chris. We got the rustic caveman in chat. It's good to see you, man. So after the death of Christine and Alvaro, he spent the majority of his time in Chad's Ford. His emotional world has changed, and it's somewhat ossified and solidified. The turmoil of loss had settled, and his work starts focusing on hills and interiors. And once again, he does start doing portraits of people again in the 70s. And which we'll get on. So around 1971, he began a series of secret paintings of a German immigrant woman who lived near Chad's Ford, and her name was Helga Testorf. So that brings us to our next painting. So he painted this in 1979. This is called Braids. So throughout the 70s and the early 80s, Wyeth created over 240 paintings of Helga in total secret. He hid it from everybody. His children didn't know. His wife didn't know. Nobody knew. It was just him and Helga. But in 1986, the full body of work was revealed all at once to the public overnight. And this was kind of like a hidden chapter in his life. It was like a retconning of his history. It really rewrote his private life and his later career overnight. So this painting, like I said, it's called Braids. It was painted in 1979, and it was part of that collection of works from Helga. It's about 16.5 by 20.5 inches. It's tempera on wood. And it's a painting of Helga, obviously in the crisp style of his crisp style, and it's almost like it's photorealistic.
Yeah,
and
that's remarkable.
It is, and when you consider the medium that he was working in, the egg tempera was such it was such an unforgiving and precise medium. The fact that he was able to get, the hair is everything about this is painfully realistic. So it's a tight scene, and it shows a study that highlights it's not only her sharp features of her face, because she did have very striking features, but it really puts a lot of emphasis on her hair and the braids. The braids become a really technical and beautiful part of this painting.
Well, and the knitting in the sweater is amazing for a watercolor.
No, it's a
Oh,
tempura.
tempura. I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
even,
I'm
yeah,
just
it's tempura.
fixated
So
on
it's even
watercolor
more.
right now.
Yeah. And so while some of the paintings of that collection were controversial, of course, I can't show those here because they're, of course, there's lots of nudes. We're not going to show those. This image is really absent any eroticism, and it just shows her with a stoic look on her face. You know, somewhat mysterious, somewhat almost Mona Lisa-like. You don't know exactly what she's looking at or what she's thinking, but she's in quiet contemplation, and he observed her in that way and really captured that of her. And the contrast of the openness of Christina's world is really countered by the close proximity and containment of this image. And it really highlights a shift from longing to closeness. Like his longing had been almost satisfied, and now he's painting the closeness. So from grief to endurance, his painting presence, he's painting presence now instead of just the lack of presence. So it's a really I don't know, it's kind of meant to be an in the moment painting, like a moment of quiet contemplation with intense detail, and just really captures her striking features. So go on to the next one, because this was a huge scandal. Again, it hit Times Magazine. So in 1986, the world learned about his 15-year secret project, and the effect is an immediate scandal, obviously. The media was quickly, they were quick to frame it frame the betrayal narrative, but that was not his intent. He never intended to hurt anybody. He always just he just wanted to paint. So the critic responses on this collection were mixed. The works are technically impressive, but some critics accuse him of being obsessed with Helga, which, you know, 240 fucking paintings over 50 years. There might be some credulity to that.
Yeah. But then again, there's also that level of, could he have just been that fascinated with her as a subject or her as a person? There's that which is true question.
Yeah. And I personally feel that his ability to emotionally detach and observe a situation really probably I'm more apt to believe that this was just an artistic relationship. So he didn't feel like he was obsessed with her, and he didn't necessarily, it wasn't sexual. But Betsy felt the betrayal personally, and the relationship would never be the same, obviously. The works and an entire emotional world outside of his marriage, and he produced hundreds of works that he'd kept secret and hidden from Betsy. Now, it's more than just like, I'm sneaking this away. It's that Betsy cataloged all of his work. She had an extensive catalog of all of his works. She helped him, and she helped him name a lot of his paintings. Like, she named a lot of his paintings. She helped him come up with subject matter. She was his artistic partner, almost as much as Helga was during that time. But this really kind of collapsed the trust, which really had been the cornerstone of their relationship. And it doesn't end their marriage, but it's definitely changed forever. And Wyeth consistently maintained that there was no sexual affair, and that the relationship was entirely artistic. And if you listen to interviews from him talking about this, he he speaks very fondly of Helga in the sense that like she was an amazing model. He could put her in a position and she would stay there until he was done. He could put her in all sorts of positions and she would model for him. And if you look back through the body of work, there's some pictures where she's in not like there's nothing pornographic. First off, there's nothing obscene about any of the work. It is all incredibly artistic. And even the nudes, you know, they are still, she's posed in a way to highlight her frame and not to highlight her nudity.
And I just did a quick background look at some some of the work, and whether it's the portrait with the tree or her with a long coat or the nudes, it's all very much like the focus is on the body, not her sexuality, not any sort of eroticism. That's very like, if you want to go there, sure, but it just doesn't. It's not there in the painting, obviously, because there's just, it's very bland. It's almost like you're looking at an anatomy book in a sense.
Well, and I think that just really highlights that he wasn't painting her as the subject. He was using her as the subject to help emphasize the subject of the painting, which was the emotional depth built into it. Not not just the not just the image, but the way the scene is designed to make you feel. So the fracture came from the secrecy in the end. In the end, it wasn't that Betsy felt felt like he was cheating on her or anything like that necessarily. It was that she'd kept it from him, that he'd hidden this from her that whole time. And over 15 years, he was able to hide this from her. 240 fucking paintings, and he was able to hide it from her. And she was, well, obviously a tad dismayed over that.
That's putting it very mildly.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up here, talk about his final legacy. And so after the revelation, after the Helga revelation, he enters the final phase of his painting career. And people now know the artist known for his distance and isolation. They knew he was painting intimacy in private. So the world that he portrayed during that time was not entirely the world that he was living. And throughout, he always continued to paint. He did a lot of interviews, and there's a lot of documentaries about him and his family. They're on YouTube. There's a bunch of documentaries with his kids speaking very lovingly of their father, which I think is another amazing thing, because so many of these artists were crazy asshole dads.
Yeah.
But he was not one of them. He was a very loving and caring father, and always was there for his kids. And his works continue to resonate with audiences today because of their accessibility and the emotional intimacy they invoke, right? Like looking at Christina's world, you don't have to look at it as like oh, well, this line is here and blah, blah. You can look at that painting and feel the loneliness and the gravity from it.
Just kind of
and his ultimate legacy.
A note with that is, everyone in the audience, and I know us, we're sitting here looking at these magnificent works, and it's not like you're sitting there and you're trying to interpret something or try to get some hidden meaning and all this other crap that it seems obsessive nowadays, and honestly ruins art, I think, for a lot of people. Is, oh, there's a hidden meaning here. It's like, no, it's right there. It's in front of you. It's easy to access. It's easy to understand, and it's not this, bullshit got ya that it feels like art has tried to become in recent decades.
Yeah, no, 100%. His art is, like I said, it's accessible. It's right there. You don't need to beat meaning out of it with melting clocks or I mean, even fancy angels and all the symbolism. He painted raw emotion on as a landscape or as a scene. And his ultimate legacy is really that of a stoic revolutionary, and he stood strong against the onslaught of artistic decadence. Like you just said, there was so much pretentious bullshit getting pumped out at this time. And his fervent disciplined works, they belay a technical talent and a rigorous dedication to draftsmanship, which is scarcely present in works of other artists contemporary to him, like fucking Rothko and Pollock. I mean, even Dolly's draftsmanship was amazing, you know, and it was he had technically tight and clean compositions. But of course, they're not near as accessible as his. And his old world techniques were really modernized and brought alive in the modern era. He brought a new revival of egg tempora. And anyhow, so hey, Fab Daddy. In 1963, he was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom by JFK. And in 2007, which is the picture here, he was awarded the National Medal of Arts by George W. Bush. And in 2009, he passed away at his home in Chadds Ford. And he painted until the day he died. There was a painting on his easel when he died that he had put strokes on the very same day. And his legacy to Western art, to our history, it can't be understated. And because he truly is one of the greatest American artists of all time. And that's what I got. So that's Andrew Wyeth, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show and the presentation. I feel that this is one of the very similar. We'll call back to Orazio Gentileschi, because I felt a great kinship with Orazio as a father, as a single father struggling to raise his children, and I feel a great deal of kinship with Wyeth, as a father, but as a kind of as a stoic, solitary man as well, as a man who really. As a man who really kind of embodied a lot of what we look for in modern men, of modern Western men that we want.
It's that kind of
the stoicness and austerity. Yeah,
it's what we kind of should want for ourselves. That the ability to internalize a lot of things without bottling it up in a negative way.
Right. So anyhow, that's all we got. So thank you for coming out. That's Andrew Wyeth. I encourage you to go look up his interviews on YouTube. There's a few of them he did. He was a fascinating man, a very charming man, and yeah, that's it.
And as always, go out, reclaim your art. Damn it.
Yep. And we're still in the air as to whether we will be back tomorrow or be back next week. Next week, yeah. Because it's the Christmas week. We're not sure what holiday plans look like, but we're gonna try. If we can do next week, we will. If not, it will be the week after. But we will have that. We'll have that up on our channels and let everybody know. And yeah,
indeed.
So thank you for coming out, everyone. Have a very Merry Christmas. Fab Daddy, Chris, Rustic Caveman, I love you guys for showing up. LGM, Malox, Bez.
Yep. Danny's over on my channel. Yeah.
You guys are all awesome, and we love you guys for the support you give us. So thank you all. Love your family, love your history, love your people, and have a wonderful day, folks.
Indeed. Catch you later.